AO 423 hours, Beijing. The Eastern Theater Command Operations Center. General Liu Wei stands motionless before a wall of tactical displays streaming real-time intelligence from the Strait of Hormuz, 4,200 miles to the west. His expression reveals nothing. His clenched fist tells a different story. On screen, Iranian fast attack boats disintegrate under precision strikes delivered by platforms their sensors never detected. 15 minutes of combat footage. 37 vessels destroyed, 0 American casualties. The general speaks 6 words that will reshape Chinese military planning for the next decade. Find out how they did this. The engagement has concluded. The analysis has just begun. And in command centers from Taipei to Tokyo, strategists are asking the same question that keeps Admiral Dong Jun, commander of the People's Liberation Army Navy, awake through dawn. If the MQ-4C Triton can orchestrate perfect battlespace awareness across 140 nautical miles of the Persian Gulf, what can it do across the 110-mile width of the Taiwan Strait? The mathematical parallels are impossible to ignore. Iran deployed 37 fast attack craft in a coordinated swarm attack designed to overwhelm a single destroyer through numerical superiority. The People's Liberation Army Navy operates over 400 missile boats, corvettes, and fast attack craft specifically designed for Taiwan Strait operations. Iranian vessels carried Chinese-manufactured C-704 anti-ship missiles. Chinese vessels carry the same weapons in greater quantities with improved guidance systems. Iran's swarm doctrine failed catastrophically against distributed sensor networks and autonomous engagement protocols. China's amphibious assault plans rely on swarm tactics at operational scale 50 times larger. The lesson transmits with brutal clarity. The United States has demonstrated capability to neutralize swarm attacks through technological architecture that renders numerical advantage irrelevant. But the implications extend far beyond tactical parity comparisons. The Strait of Hormuz engagement exposed 3 strategic vulnerabilities that Chinese military planners cannot ignore, cannot overcome through conventional investment, and cannot compensate for through numerical advantage. These vulnerabilities fundamentally challenge the operational assumptions underlying every Chinese contingency plan for Taiwan reunification. The first vulnerability, electromagnetic transparency. Iranian commanders believed their fast attack craft were executing a surprise assault. They were catastrophically wrong. The MQ-4C Triton had catalogued, tracked, and designated every vessel for destruction before Iranian crews comprehended they had been detected. The drone operated at 60,000 feet, beyond visual range, beyond surface-based radar detection envelopes, broadcasting no electromagnetic signature that Iranian sensors could identify as hostile. It observed everything. It revealed nothing. Then it transmitted targeting solutions through encrypted data links that converted observations into coordinated strikes across multiple domains simultaneously. The Taiwan Strait offers no sanctuary from this technology. The waterway measures 110 miles at its widest point, narrowing to 81 miles at the closest approach between mainland China and Taiwan. Any vessel operating in these waters exists within persistent surveillance coverage from multiple overlapping sensor platforms. The United States operates at minimum 4 MQ-4C Triton drones assigned to Indo-Pacific theater operations. Each platform provides 24-hour endurance at operational altitude. 4 drones generate continuous 96-hour coverage cycles with built-in redundancy for maintenance intervals and mission overlap. Chinese amphibious operations would require concentrating hundreds of vessels in confined waters for extended periods measured in days, not minutes. Every ship would be tracked from departure. Every formation change would be catalogued. Every weapons system activation would be recorded. The element of surprise, fundamental to amphibious assault doctrine across every military in history, has been rendered obsolete by platforms that see everything and reveal nothing until ordnance impacts targets. The second vulnerability, decision cycle compression. The Hormuz engagement demonstrated something more threatening than advanced sensors. It demonstrated decision-making processes that operate faster than human cognition. From initial detection at 0347 hours to first weapons impact at 0351 hours, 4 minutes elapsed. Within that interval, targeting data was collected, processed, transmitted across 140 nautical miles to 4 separate platforms, analyzed through fire control algorithms, prioritized by threat assessment protocols, and converted into coordinated strikes that destroyed lead elements of the Iranian formation before their commanders could execute evasive maneuvers. Human decision-makers existed within this sequence only to authorize engagement. The actual targeting, prioritization, and coordination occurred through automated systems operating at electromagnetic speed. Chinese military doctrine relies on overwhelming firepower delivered through massed formations executing coordinated maneuvers. The doctrine assumes adversaries require time to process incoming threats, formulate responses, disseminate orders, and execute countermeasures. That assumption has been invalidated. Automated engagement systems identify threats and execute responses faster than human commanders can issue orders. The PLA Navy's carefully rehearsed formation tactics, refined through decades of exercises in the South China Sea, become liabilities when adversaries can target entire formations simultaneously and execute coordinated strikes before defensive maneuvers commence. The carefully constructed kill chains that Chinese planners envision, massed missile salvos overwhelming carrier strike group defenses through sheer volume, face an adversary whose defensive systems have already calculated intercept solutions and executed countermeasures before Chinese fire control radar achieves lock. The third vulnerability, network resilience asymmetry. The American engagement architecture demonstrated in the Hormuz Strait operates as a distributed system where every sensor feeds every shooter through multiple redundant pathways. The MQ-4C Triton transmitted targeting data simultaneously to the USS Carney, 2 FA-18E Super Hornets, and 2 MH-60R Seahawk helicopters through Link 16 tactical data links operating across frequency-hopping spread spectrum protocols resistant to jamming and interception. When Iranian coastal radar installations were destroyed by HARM missiles, their fast attack craft lost command guidance. When American sensor platforms came under hypothetical attack, targeting data would automatically reroute through satellite uplinks, alternative aircraft, or other surface vessels within the network. The architecture possesses no single point of failure. Chinese military networks, despite billions invested in command and control infrastructure, remain comparatively centralized with identifiable choke points vulnerable to disruption. These three vulnerabilities converge in the Taiwan Strait scenario, with devastating implications for Chinese operational planning. Every Chinese amphibious assault simulation requires concentrating massive forces in confined waters within 110 miles of adversary sensors. Every simulation assumes multiple days of buildup will be necessary to marshal sufficient forces for successful beach landings. Every simulation calculates acceptable loss ratios based on overwhelming numerical superiority compensating for technological disadvantage. But the Hormuz engagement demonstrates that overwhelming numerical superiority means nothing against adversaries who achieve perfect battle space awareness, execute engagement sequences faster than human reaction time, and coordinate strikes across distributed networks immune to single-point failures. The strategic calculus becomes brutal in its simplicity. China would need to concentrate approximately 400 amphibious vessels and 800 supporting naval combatants to execute a successful Taiwan invasion, according to most Western military analyses. Those vessels would operate in waters under continuous surveillance from platforms they cannot detect. They would face engagement from weapons systems coordinated through networks they cannot disrupt. They would encounter decision cycles they cannot match. The mathematical outcome mirrors the Hormuz engagement, but at horrifying scale. Not 37 vessels destroyed in 15 minutes, but potentially hundreds of vessels destroyed across hours of sustained engagement. Not 185 casualties, but tens of thousands. Not tactical embarrassment, but strategic catastrophe broadcast in real time across global media networks. Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense has reached identical conclusions. Within 72 hours of the Hormuz engagement, Defense Minister Wellington Koo convened emergency consultations with American military liaisons stationed in Taipei. The meeting agenda contained one item: accelerating Taiwan's integration into the distributed sensor network architecture that proved so devastatingly effective against Iranian swarm tactics. Taiwan already operates a sophisticated air defense network. But that network functions primarily in autonomous mode, designed to defend Taiwanese airspace using Taiwanese sensors and Taiwanese weapons. The strategic shift under consideration involves transforming Taiwan from defended territory into sensor node within larger American operational architecture. The implications of this transformation extend far beyond Taiwan's immediate defense. If Taiwanese radar installations, surface vessels, and air defense batteries achieve full integration with American MQ-4C Triton surveillance and Link 16 data links, the Taiwan Strait becomes the most comprehensively monitored body of water in human history. Chinese vessels would not merely face Taiwanese defenses supplemented by American support, they would face a unified battle space awareness system where every Taiwanese sensor contributes to collective targeting solutions executed by the most technologically advanced military in history. The 110-mile-wide strait transforms from geographical feature into kill zone where every Chinese vessel becomes a designated target before leaving port. Chinese strategists understand these implications with uncomfortable clarity. Internal assessments circulating through PLA Eastern Theater Command headquarters acknowledge that conventional amphibious assault operations have become prohibitively costly against adversaries possessing persistent surveillance and networked engagement capabilities. The assessments do not conclude that Taiwan reunification has become impossible. They conclude that reunification through conventional military operations has become unacceptably expensive in blood, treasure, and international legitimacy. The search for alternatives has intensified with corresponding urgency. Three alternative approaches have emerged within Chinese strategic planning circles, each designed to circumvent the sensor-shooter networks that proved so effective in the Hormuz engagement. The first approach, electromagnetic warfare at scale. If American sensor networks derive advantage from perfect battlespace awareness transmitted through data links, then disrupting those data links neutralizes the advantage. Chinese investment in electronic warfare capabilities has accelerated dramatically. The PLA Strategic Support Force has received funding increases exceeding 40% across the past 3 fiscal years, specifically for jamming systems, cyber weapons, and anti-satellite capabilities designed to blind, disrupt, or destroy the networks that enable distributed engagement architecture. The theory possesses elegant simplicity. You cannot target what you cannot see, and you cannot coordinate what you cannot communicate. But the theory encounters practical obstacles that Iranian commanders would recognize. Modern military networks employ multiple redundant pathways specifically to defeat jamming attempts. The Link 16 tactical data link operates across 51 frequency channels using pseudo-random frequency hopping patterns, cycling at rates exceeding 30,000 hops per second. Successfully jamming such systems requires electromagnetic energy across entire frequency bands at power levels that would interfere with the jammer's own communications. Satellite uplinks operate through directional beams resistant to ground-based jamming. And even if Chinese electronic warfare assets achieved comprehensive jamming across the electromagnetic spectrum, American platforms retain autonomous engagement capabilities based on locally stored targeting data. The MQ-4C Triton could be rendered unable to communicate with surface vessels and still provide targeting information through alternative means, including visual signals, pre-programmed attack coordinates, or even autonomous strike execution. The electronic warfare solution that appears elegant in planning documents encounters messy complications in operational reality. The second approach, asymmetric escalation. If conventional amphibious assault has become too costly, then escalate to domains where China possesses advantage or where American intervention becomes unacceptably risky. This approach manifests in multiple variations. Economic warfare through comprehensive blockade enforced beyond Taiwan's territorial waters, creating humanitarian crisis that forces negotiated settlement. Cyber attacks against Taiwanese infrastructure designed to create social collapse without kinetic military action. Targeted strikes against Taiwanese leadership using special operations forces inserted covertly. And the option that haunts every strategic planner from Washington to Brussels, limited nuclear demonstration designed to signal resolve and compel American withdrawal from the conflict. Each variation shares common logic. Avoid the conventional engagement where American sensor networks provide decisive advantage, and instead operate in domains where technological superiority matters less than will, resolve, and pain tolerance. These approaches carry catastrophic risks. Economic blockade requires enforcing exclusion zones against commercial shipping from multiple nations, inviting international intervention that China's leadership seeks to avoid. Cyber attacks and special operations create ambiguity about conflict initiation that might backfire by justifying American preemptive response. And nuclear escalation, even at demonstration level, crosses thresholds that would trigger consequences impossible to predict or control. The asymmetric approaches that circumvent American sensor networks also circumvent the limited warfare paradigms that make conflict calculable and controllable. Chinese leadership, despite public rhetoric, demonstrates consistent preference for calculable outcomes over revolutionary gambles. The asymmetric escalation approach remains theoretical precisely because its consequences cannot be calculated with acceptable confidence. The third approach, the long game. If current technological disparities make Taiwan operations prohibitively expensive, then invest in technological development until disparities narrow or reverse. Chinese defense spending has increased an average of 7.2% annually across the past decade, with disproportionate allocation toward aerospace, autonomous systems, artificial intelligence, and quantum communications. The goal is not merely matching American capabilities, but achieving breakthroughs that render current American advantages obsolete. Chinese military journals publish extensive analysis of concepts, including AI-enabled swarm coordination, quantum radar immune to stealth technology, hypersonic weapons too fast for existing point defense systems, and directed energy weapons that engage targets at light speed. The long-game approach accepts that Taiwan reunification may require another decade or two of technological development before acceptable operational windows emerge. This approach carries different risks. Time favors the defender as much as the attacker. Every year, China spends developing countermeasures. Taiwan and the United States spend developing countermeasures. The technological competition becomes an arms race without finish line, consuming resources while producing uncertain outcomes. And time introduces political variables impossible to control. Taiwan's identity continues evolving in directions that complicate reunification scenarios. International alliances shift in response to Chinese assertiveness. Domestic pressures within China intensify as economic growth slows and expectations remain unfulfilled. The long game that appears prudent strategically may prove untenable politically. Yet despite these alternative approaches, the fundamental strategic equation established by the Hormuz engagement remains unchanged. The United States has demonstrated capability to achieve perfect battlespace awareness across contested waters, coordinate engagement across multiple domains simultaneously, and execute decision cycles faster than adversaries can formulate responses. These capabilities function as force multipliers that render numerical advantages irrelevant and conventional operational planning obsolete. China can develop electronic warfare capabilities, explore asymmetric escalation, or play the long game of technological development. But absent revolutionary breakthroughs, the Taiwan Strait will remain a body of water where American sensor networks track every vessel, American data links coordinate every engagement, and American weapons destroy targets designated by platforms operating beyond Chinese detection capabilities. The strategic implications cascade through Indo-Pacific security architecture with seismic intensity. Japan has accelerated integration of its self-defense forces into American operational networks, recognizing that distributed sensor architectures provide defensive advantages that indigenous capabilities cannot match. South Korea has initiated quiet consultations about expanding data sharing agreements beyond North Korean contingencies to include broader regional security cooperation. Australia has committed to acquiring MQ-4C Triton platforms, specifically to contribute sensor coverage to collective security arrangements. The Philippines has reversed previous policies restricting American military presence, recognizing that proximity to Chinese naval forces requires defensive capabilities only available through American technological partnerships. Every regional actor has observed the same lesson. Chinese numerical advantages in ships, aircraft, and missiles mean nothing against adversaries who see everything, communicate instantly, and shoot first. China finds itself confronting strategic dilemma with no satisfactory resolution. Taiwan reunification remains core political objective that leadership cannot abandon without legitimacy crisis. But military operations to achieve reunification have become prohibitively expensive against adversaries whose technological advantages grow more pronounced with each passing year. The middle path between abandoning objectives and accepting catastrophic costs requires either technological breakthroughs that remain theoretical or political solutions that require concessions Chinese leadership refuses to contemplate. The dilemma produces paralysis disguised as patience, strategic restraint presented as careful planning, and postponement marketed as wisdom. But paralysis carries costs. Every year, Taiwan continues separate existence. Taiwanese identity solidifies further from Chinese identity. Every year, China delays action. International coalitions opposing Chinese expansion grow more cohesive. Every year, technological gaps persist. Chinese military investments deliver diminishing returns against adversaries whose innovation cycles operate faster. The window for Taiwan reunification through any means does not remain open indefinitely. It narrows with each passing year, compressed by demographic change, political evolution, and technological advancement that favors defenders over attackers in an era of persistent surveillance and networked engagement. The Hormuz engagement demonstrated more than tactical innovation. It demonstrated strategic transformation in the fundamental nature of military power. For centuries, military advantage derived from numerical superiority, positional advantage, or qualitative equipment advantages. But the integration of persistent surveillance, automated decision-making, and distributed engagement networks creates new form of military power that transcends traditional metrics. It is not about having more ships or better missiles. It is about seeing everything, deciding faster, and coordinating perfectly across domains that adversaries cannot match. This form of power cannot be defeated through traditional approaches of building more platforms or developing better weapons. It can only be matched through equivalent technological achievement or circumvented through revolutionary operational concepts that do not yet exist. China is watching, China is learning, but watching and learning do not translate into capability. The MQ-4C Triton operates at technological intersection of multiple disciplines, including advanced sensors, satellite communications, artificial intelligence, data fusion algorithms, and network protocols refined across decades of American investment and operational experience. Replicating the capability requires more than reverse engineering individual components. It requires integrating entire technological ecosystem, including institutional knowledge, operational experience, and engineering culture that cannot be stolen through espionage or purchased through checkbook diplomacy. Chinese observers can analyze every detail of the Hormuz engagement and still find themselves unable to replicate the capabilities that made American victory so complete and Iranian defeat so catastrophic. The Taiwan Strait remains contested waters, but the nature of contestation has fundamentally changed. It is no longer a question of whether China possesses sufficient forces to conduct amphibious assault. It is a question of whether any concentration of conventional forces can overcome adversaries who see perfectly, coordinate instantly, and engage decisively before attackers complete their preparations. The Hormuz engagement answered that question with brutal clarity. 37 boats attacked. 15 minutes later, 37 boats had been destroyed. The scale matters less than the principle. Numerical advantage means nothing when adversaries achieve comprehensive battle space awareness and perfect coordination. The strait remains open. The question remains unanswered. And in Beijing, General Liu Wei continues watching footage that confirms his worst strategic fears and validates his most pessimistic assessments.